All right, so solving more equations. So this we're getting more into, we're solving rational equations, and we're also going to solve absolute value equations, okay? So rationals, proportions, that's basically what I mean. So the first step for proportions is to cross multiply. And you can write that little example. So A over B equals C over D is the same thing as A times D, and that equals B times C. So you just multiply straight across. You make that like, you make a cross and you multiply, okay? The second step is to distribute if necessary. The third step is to solve. Last step is to always check your answer. So let's just go through some of these. So let's look at example A. My first step on this, we have two fractions. We have a fraction on the left side, a fraction on the right side. So I want to get rid of those fractions. The easiest way to do that when you only have two is to cross multiply. So I'm going to cross multiply. I'm going to multiply 6 times 4 and 3 times x. Okay, 6 times 4 is 24, 3 times x is 3x. Then I could distribute if necessary. There's nothing to distribute here though, so I'm not going to do that. And then I'm going to solve. So to get that x by itself, whoops, I went too far. You divide by 3. 3x divided by 3, you're left with just x. 24 divided by 3 is 8. So you get x equals 8. And then we have to check our answer. So I'm going to plug in that 8 for the x. And then I'm going to see if those equal each other. 8 6 reduces to 4/3, so it does. So we're good on that. Okay, let's look at example C. So again, we have the two fractions. My first step is going to be to cross multiply. So you do 8 times m minus 8 and 6 times m minus 9. Now we have to distribute. And on this one we have to because we have things to distribute. So 8 times m minus 8, maybe, is 8m minus 64. 6 times m minus 9 is 6m minus 54. Now I'm going to solve. So I'm going to get all my variables to one side, all my numbers to the other side. So I'm going to subtract the 6m to move it over to the left. So 8m minus 6m is 2m, then the minus 64, and that equals negative 54. Now I'm going to add that 64 over, and I get 2m equals 10, divide by 2, and you get m equals 5. Okay, then we're just going to go back. We're going to check our answer. So I'm going to plug in 5 for my m's. So we have 8 over 5 minus 9, and 6 over 5 minus 8. That's 8 over negative 4, which is, and then 6 over negative 3, which is negative 2, and that equals negative 2, so we're good. Okay. The biggest reason we check these answers is because that is just a way to double check that you're actually getting the right answer. If you don't check your answer, then you might have missed a sign somewhere, like say you got negative 5. That wouldn't have worked in this case, and you need to go back and double check your work. Okay. Let's look at example E, just same thing. So the first step here, I'm just going to move it up so we have more room. The first step is to cross multiply. So you have 4 times v minus 7 equals 3 times y, not v, I meant y minus 7, and then 3 times y minus 9. Then we distribute, so 4y minus 28 equals 3y minus 27. And then I'm going to solve. So I'm going to move the y's over. So 4y minus 3y is just y, minus 28 equals negative 27. Add the 28 over, you get y equals 1. Then we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to check our answer. So we're going to plug in 1 for our y's. So 1 minus 7 over 1 minus 9 equals 3/4. Maybe. We need to figure that out. So that's negative 6 over negative 8 equals 3/4. Negative 6 divided by negative 8 reduces to positive 3/4. So 3/4 equals 3/4, and we're good. Okay? So that's when you're solving proportions. You cross multiply, you distribute, then you solve, and then you check your answer. Okay, last step always is to check your answer. Whoa, excuse me. Okay, this thing's being way slow right now. Okay, so now we're going to solve absolute values. Maybe my thing is being extremely slow right now. Okay, So the first step to this is to make sure the absolute value expression is isolated. So isolated means it's by itself. So we have to get it by itself on one side of the equal sign. The second step is to set the insides equal to a positive number and to a negative number. So you always set it equal to the positive and the negative. You'll have two answers on all of these. And then you solve both equations, and then you write your answer as a solution set. Okay, so that's like going to be x equals something and something, or y equals something and something. Okay, so let's go through this. So the first step is to make sure the absolute value is isolated. So in example A, it is isolated. We don't have to do anything about that. The second step is to set whatever's inside equal to the positive number and to the negative number. Because if you think about absolute values, okay, before we get into solving this, I just want to go through some absolute values. So if you have like the absolute value of 9, that is 9. Because the absolute value is the distance away from 0. If this is 0, 9 is 9 steps away from 0. Okay, same thing. Say we need to find the absolute value of -3. Well, if I go on here, oh, dang it. Shoot, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, so if we go on here, I'll start over. What is happening? Sorry, guys. Discard that. Okay, sorry. But if we do the absolute value of -3, that would be the distance away from -3, or from 0, which is 3. So it's always a positive number. The absolute value is always positive. But when you solve these, you have to set it equal to the negative and the positive because it's the distance away from 0. That's really what we're finding. We're finding the distance, the absolute distance we can be away from 0. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Okay, so on this, we're solving this equation. So again, first is isolated. Second, we're going to set the insides equal to the positive and the negative. So I'm going to have x equals +2 and x equals -2. Then the third step is to solve, except here there's nothing to solve. They're already x equals. So then we just have to write our answer as a solution set. So you get x equals -2, 2. And I would just always put that in order from least to greatest. Okay, let's look at example C. So first, we need to make sure it's isolated, which it is. The absolute value is isolated. It's by itself. So now I'm going to set the insides equal to the positive and to the negative. So I have d plus 1 equals 8, and d plus 1 equals -8. And then I solve. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides on both of these. When you subtract 1 from 8, you get 7. Subtract 1 from -8, you get -9. So then the answer ends up being d equals -9, 7. Okay, so you have to set it equal to the positive and the negative. Okay, that's the biggest thing. You will always have two answers on absolute values. Okay. Now this last one, so we look at example E. We have to first make sure it's isolated. This one is not isolated. That -2 is right next to the absolute value, which means we have to divide by -2 to isolate that. So -2 divided by -2 cancels, and you're left with z plus 3, the absolute value of z plus 3. -14 divided by -2 is positive 7. Okay, so we've isolated that absolute value now. And then you set the inside equal to the positive and the inside equal to the negative. So you have z plus 3 equals 7, z plus 3 equals -7. Then we're going to subtract the 3 over because we're solving, and you get z equals positive 4, and you get z equals -10. Okay. Then the last step is to just write it as a solution set. So you get -10 and 4. Z equals -10 and 4. Okay. Please remember to take the quiz. The biggest things from this, if you're solving a proportion, you cross multiply. If you're solving a absolute value, isolate the absolute value, set it equal to the positive and to the negative. Okay. Take the quiz. I'll see you guys tomorrow.